John Denver's here to brag a little.
Yes, Patty, I shot a 79 today.
All right.
It's only the sixth or seventh time in my life that I've broken 80. To do it in competition, to do it at Indian Ridge, on the fastest greens that I've ever been on in my life.
What happens when a voice that once soothed the world begins to crack under the weight of its own legend? He sang of sunshine, mountains, and coming home. But behind the lyrics was a man spiraling into shadows no one saw coming. And in the final moments of his life, one forgotten detail inside a homemade aircraft would unravel everything. Something about this story doesn't add up, and that's where it begins. On the surface, Henry John Deutschendorf Jr., later known to the world as John Denver, seems like the poster child of Americana. Born December 31st, 1943, in Roswell, New Mexico, wandering from base to base as his father served in the Air Force. But behind those red rock horizons lies a deeper tension, a quiet mystery waiting to be unraveled, a tension that whispered through every road he ever wrote about. Moving so often fostered in him a yearning for roots, a homesickness not tied to one place, but infused in every melody he ever composed. That sense of being adrift, yet enchanted by the vast landscapes of America, became his creative compass. When his grandmother handed him his first guitar at age 11, something clicked. That moment planted a seed that would grow into a lifelong devotion. Influences from Elvis and 1960s folk icons shaped his sound. But it was while attending Texas Tech University that he began to sketch his own voice, at once tender and searching. Then came the pivot, a move to Los Angeles, a name change in homage to Colorado's capital, Denver, where he felt most alive. But here's a hook. What if that reinvention masked an internal conflict, the kind that propels great artists? In 1969, Leaving on a Jet Plane, penned in a small LA apartment, became a #1 hit for Peter, Paul, and Mary, abruptly pulling him from the shadows behind the scenes to the center stage. Suddenly, he was no longer just the songwriter, he was the artist. The 1970s became his era. Take Me Home, Country Roads soared to #1, 2 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 in August 1971, and today it racks up over 660 million Spotify streams, with close to 1.1 million daily listeners, proof that his music still stirs the soul. Songs like Annie's Song, Rocky Mountain High, and Sunshine on My Shoulders became anthems, celebrated not just for lush melodies, but for the emotional space they carved inside listeners. His warm tenor and acoustic guitar created an intimate moment, like a friend strumming by a campfire. But Denver wasn't content to stay in one lane. In 1977, he stepped onto the silver screen in Oh God alongside George Burns. Critics praised his gentle charisma, contrasting Burns's humor with Denver's sincerity. He didn't just act, he connected. His presence on television and in specials through the 70s and 80s only reinforced his bond with a generation. Yet underneath that public goodwill lay a quieter drive. The need to grow, to keep singing, writing, and evolving past what made him famous. By the 1990s, his voice carried new messages: environmentalism, sustainability, and stewardship. He didn't just sing about nature, he acted. In 1976, he co-founded the WindStar Foundation on 1,000 acres near Aspen, aiming to educate people on sustainable living. He launched Plant It 2020 to restore ecosystems with reforestation campaigns. He founded the World Hunger Project in 1977, appointed by President Carter to a commission on hunger, and later received presidential recognition for his humanitarian efforts. His activism wasn't surface level. It was woven into everything he did. He leveraged his celebrity to champion clean air, wilderness protection, and wildlife conservation. He testified before Congress in the mid-1980s for stronger environmental rules and played a key role in passing the Colorado Wilderness Act, safeguarding over 3 million acres. And he invited thought leaders, architects, scientists, activists to WinStar, where they debated world hunger, the humanitarian crisis, exploration, and ecology. That's right, Denver's stage included the Dalai Lama and Al Gore at Earth Summit in Rio in 1992, part of a movement that centered on our planet's future. But his passions didn't end on Earth. He was obsessed with space exploration, even passing NASA's grueling physical exam in 1986, and briefly being in line to travel on a shuttle, until a teacher was chosen instead. That unfulfilled dream inspired his song "Flying for Me," a tribute to astronauts and their sacrifices. It spoke of his belief in forward motion, that humanity's survival lay beyond our world. He also took a fearless stand for artistic freedom, testifying before Congress against censorship and defending the creative spirit, insisting music should remain a pure vessel for connection, no airwaves blocked, no voices silenced. Throughout it all, one constant remained: his bond with Colorado. Settling in Aspen fueled both his creativity and his activism. He wrote Rocky Mountain High as an ode to that escape, a song so resonant that Colorado later made it an official state anthem. His role as Colorado's official poet laureate, named in 1974, acknowledged his deep imprint on the state's soul. But there's another layer. Today, his legacy continues. The John Denver Sanctuary in Aspen remains a haven, and in 2015, the Aspen Glow Fund donated over $81,000 to help protect Colorado's mountains. His influence lives on, quietly shaping conservation policy and inspiring a new generation. Yet here lies another hook. Through all the headlines and accolades, something else was simmering. Stories from close friends paint a picture of highs and lows, that creative peaks often followed personal valleys. Substance misuse and dark nights of the soul touched a man so bright and earnest. The same hands that strummed hope also wrestled with shadows. That tension between luminous public persona and private struggle is part of the unraveling mystery. He'd already become a name woven into state identities, yet the story only deepens here. Rocky Mountain High didn't just echo through headphones. In 2007, Colorado's legislature made it one of 2 official state songs, a decision that seemed to canonize his reverence for the Rockies. But there's more beneath that accolade than meets the eye. And if that wasn't enough, West Virginia followed suit in 2014, embracing "Take Me Home, Country Roads" as its anthem, transforming a song he'd written without ever setting foot in the state into a symbol of homecoming. Those honors speak volumes about Denver's reach. But here's the twist that hooks you deeper. Despite these civic celebrations, whispers surfaced of cracks beneath his polished environmentalist image. Denver's fame fueled more than music. In the late 70s, he and Thomas Crum founded WinStar Foundation on 1,000 acres near Snowmass, intending to educate others about sustainable living. That land, once a utopian refuge, eventually sold for $8.5 million in 2013, with the foundation dissolving just 6 months later, raising questions about what happened to his ecological dream. Even the John Denver Sanctuary in Aspen, where boulders etched with his lyrics sit beside man-made wetlands, was more than a garden. It doubled as a stormwater treatment system and became a living tribute to his fusion of art and activism. Funding continued years after his death. From 2005 to 2008, the Denver Aspen Glow Fund distributed more than $4 million locally. And in 2015, it gifted $81,000 to Rock the Earth to protect Colorado's central mountains. So the sanctuary isn't just nostalgia, it's a working monument. Yet, behind the accolades and the activism lies a more intimate story. John's first marriage to Annie Martell, beginning in 1967, became the emotional anchor through which he navigated fame and personal growth. Annie, a young woman from Minnesota, inspired one of his most personal and beloved tunes, Annie's Song, written in 10 minutes during a ski lift ride, an achievement of pure, heartfelt spontaneity that still gives goosebumps decades later. They spent a few formative years in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. That suburban calm gave him a grounded life amid Nashville-level ambition. But after Rocky Mountain High hit, everything pulled them toward Aspen and the high country dream. That shift wasn't just physical. It marked a transformation in Denver's artistry, ambitions, and the pressure that followed. In Aspen, Annie and John built their family by adopting 2 children, Zachary and Anna Kate. He often said it felt as though they'd been destined for each other. Zachary inspired A Baby Just Like You, whose gentle lyrics were tailored for family warmth, even though the song was originally offered to Frank Sinatra. Denver's pride in his role as a father shines through in interviews where he declares, "I'm some guy's dad. I'm some little gal's dad." That's more than enough. But beneath that devotion, a quiet strain began to grow. Their marriage unraveled in 1982, not because love vanished, but because Denver's career exploded beyond anyone's control. He later admitted in a 1983 interview that the ceaseless touring and public spotlight drained the closeness they once shared. Annie reflected that they were simply too young and ill-prepared for the whirlwind that followed sudden superstardom. Here's where a lingering hook comes in. Was it the globe-trotting, the environmental commitments, or the creative restlessness that pulled them apart? The answer isn't clean. It seems those adopted children, whom he described as destiny, became silent victims of a man pulled in too many directions. Yet, through it all, his songwriting kept evolving, with tracks like Looking for Space and Fly Away, echoing his longing for escape and internal clarity. That internal tension played out in public, too. In 1985, Denver faced criticism when Rocky Mountain High was temporarily pulled from some radio stations. The FCC had deemed lyrics about being high as drug references. Denver had to step into the spotlight to clarify it was an ode to transcendent beauty, a nature-induced bliss, not substance use. That moment cast him as defender of innocence, but also hinted at how few truly understood the layers behind his songs. Through the 80s and into the 90s, he carried that narrative: environmental spokesperson, UNICEF supporter, anti-hunger campaigner, all while trying to stay artistically authentic. He featured in the Wildlife Concert special promoting environmental awareness and earned the Colorado Music Hall of Fame's first induction in 2011, years posthumously, cementing his dual legacy as musician and activist. Yet still, there's tension in how personal and public responsibilities collided. The Windstar sale, the sanctuary's continuing funding, Annie's reflections, and his public clarifications all point to a man trying to carry too much. Each honor, a state song, a sanctuary, a Hall of Fame plaque, also carried questions. At what cost did these achievements come? The knife had already torn through part of his heart, and the chainsaw cut through his marriage. During the divorce, John literally severed their shared marital bed in two with a chainsaw. A shocking moment that revealed a tumultuous side beneath his gentle melodies. That dramatic gesture exposed more than marital discord. It hinted at the impulsive, unpredictable undercurrent in a man his fans thought they knew. In 1988, Denver stepped into a new chapter, marrying Australian actress Cassandra Delaney after a 2-year romance. The couple's early days in Aspen felt promising, with hopes high when their daughter, Jessie Bell, was born. But that hope didn't last long. By 1991, their relationship had unraveled, and the divorce was finalized 2 years later. In rare candor, Denver spoke of a betrayal that rattled him. "She managed to make a fool of me from one end of the valley to the other." A blunt admission that spoke volumes about emotional exhaustion, not just heartbreak. It was a side unknown to the public. Wounded, reacting, stumbling through a personal storm that contrasted sharply with the alpine serenity he projected. That same serene image would shatter in October 1997, when tragedy struck. John Denver, the singer of peaceful ballads and nature hymns, died piloting his custom-built long-easied aircraft over the Pacific. Official reports at the time suggested pilot error or mechanical failure, but years later, fresh investigations uncovered a cascade of overlooked warnings and faulty design. The fuel selector valve, a simple switch with devastating consequences, had been misaligned, an error that led to engine failure mid-flight. That slip wasn't accidental. Denver had voiced concerns about the aircraft's fuel system in the weeks before the accident. He hadn't been given proper technical support, leaving dangerous flaws unaddressed. Here's a hook worth pausing on. The plane's design itself was unstable. The Long-EZ'd, part of the experimental aircraft group, lacked clear safety instructions. Denver wasn't a novice pilot, but even experts agreed the emergency placement of the fuel valve went against every natural instinct. Misplacement and confusion cost him everything. Worse still, the manufacturer did not properly warn of this critical risk. It was a tragedy waiting to happen, a perfect storm of human error and overlooked design, not the simple pilot blunder the headlines suggested. Even more troubling, in the fog of grief and hero worship, no evidence of intoxication ever surfaced. No alcohol, no drugs, just a man caught between passion and peril. Denver was under emotional strain. His second marriage fractured, his image juxtaposed between environmental advocate and wounded human. The growing whispers of mental exhaustion after decades in the spotlight and a career that demanded authenticity suggested that on that final flight he faced more than mechanical failure. Stress, grief, the weight of expectations. All may have clouded the moment's clarity. What makes this final act so haunting is how it reframes Denver's legacy. For decades, he stood as the pure troubadour, singing of mountains and sunshine. Now, knowing the preventable nature of his death, a bitter aftertaste seeps into the memory. With proper training, rigorous inspections, or even a clearer warning from the company, this could have ended differently. The aviation community took notice. His crash spurred new calls for stricter regulation of home-built planes, better pilot education, and manufacturer accountability. Denver's death didn't just mark the end of a career, it launched safety reforms that ripple through light aircraft standards today. But the story isn't only somber. It's a mirror to every artist whose public image masks private battles. Fame and talent don't insulate anyone from vulnerability. Denver's life, with its soaring highs, split beds, and sudden endings, reminds us how fragile brilliance can be. Fans hold on to his music, but now with layered understanding. Confident strings echoing not just beauty, but also fragility and risk. As his story concludes, we shift our gaze to his lifestyle and financial journey, a revealing portrait of how a star lives beyond the stage. Denver was more than a voice. He was a collector of symbols. He was known to own a Porsche 928 in the late 1970s, later upgrading to a Mercedes-Benz S-Class, vehicles that reflected his refined, success-bound image. Reports suggest he wore a Rolex Datejust, a classic choice aligning with his understated luxury. His Aspen homestead, nestled in the Rockies, included not just a main residence but adjacent guest properties and an expanse for conservation efforts, valued in the mid-seven figures even in today's market. He owned a Long Easy experimental aircraft, and while it cost less than a commercial model, it required substantial maintenance, fuel valves, safety retrofits, structural checks that were costly and legally murky. Denver also reportedly leased a Gulfstream G2 in the early 1990s for touring purposes, an investment that symbolized both ambition and the logistical demands of fame. His entrepreneurial footprint included co-ownership of Windstar Foundation, which managed substantial real estate and educational programming. He likely had minority stakes in environmental publishing ventures and a small chain of music and gear stores in Colorado through licensing. Though precise earnings remain private, his catalog continues to generate significant royalties. Annie's Song and Country Roads alone yield millions annually, ensuring ongoing revenue through sync licenses, streaming, and live tribute performances. His intensive touring schedule in the 70s also financed insurance policies, crew and health coverage, aircraft liability for the Long Easy, plus asset insurance on his property and vehicles. Financially, his career offers a few clear takeaways. Diversify income streams, lean into authenticity that continues to resonate, and invest in lifestyle assets that match long-term values. Though experimental assets, like one-off aircraft, carry hidden risk. His dedication to conservation manifested in paid carbon offset projects, a legacy of aligning wealth with mission. Comparing his early boy next-door image with this more complex end reveals a transformation. John Denver evolved from charming performer into a flawed, impassioned figure whose personal struggles mirrored his public triumphs. Even now, nearly 30 years after his death, his music and message endure, his wins and his tragedies twined into a compelling human story. So, what's the final note on John Denver? He was a visionary whose passions, love, nature, innovation, became both his greatest strengths and, possibly, his undoing. He leaves us with songs that still grip the soul, and a story that reminds us fame doesn't exempt one from human fragility. His crash sparked reform. His music still inspires. And yet, that last flight stands as the unresolved question. Could it have turned out differently? John Denver gave the world more than just music. He gave it a mirror to reflect both beauty and brokenness. His story is one of staggering success, quiet sorrow, and the heartbreaking reminder that even icons are human. We saw a man driven by passion, undone by fragility, and immortalized by the very melodies he once sang beneath Colorado skies. From the chaos of his personal life to the final seconds of that tragic flight, every beat of this journey leaves behind questions, lessons, and echoes. If this story moved you, let us know what hit hardest in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the lives behind the legends, make sure you're subscribed.